Hey, welcome to the Gentle Art of Leadership podcast. So excited that you're here for this week's episode. As you're watching this episode, would you do me a small favor and please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Also, make sure after you watch the episode that you share this with somebody whose life, leadership, and business that this will make better. Adam Carriker, how you doing?
I'm good. Trying to not
have
move
you
the
here.
mic there.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I was thinking back, our stories connected 6-7 years ago.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The place where we met's actually now a laundromat, in case you're wondering. You probably
is.
knew that already, though.
I do, yeah. So what was a jiu-jitsu school,
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching kiddos one day, and you walk in
Yep.
and teaching your son. And tell us what was going on. Like, where were you at in life then? What's kind of your story leading up to there before we met? Because you got quite a story.
We had just moved to northern Colorado, and I actually was just telling you this before the show. I've always told my wife my kids are in 824 sports, and I'm rounding down when I say that. But when we first moved here, I was like, Ange, I want our kids to learn life lessons. The two things I want them to do if they never do a sport: swimming lessons, learn some self-defense, just basic things. And so we put them in jiu-jitsu. It just happened to be, we go to that King Soopers all the time to go get groceries. And so we drove by it, ate at the Baskin Robbins a lot as well, which is right next door. I don't like ice cream at all, but I was like, let's try this place. Okay. And so it was just 5 minutes from our house. It was convenient. It was like 4:30. So get done, go back home, enjoy the evening. And so that's kind of how we got. It was actually Jacob and Addison. I think Addison was in it as well. I know Jacob was, though.
Yeah, she was, I think, a little less frequently, or she started with him, and I don't know if she did it as long.
She wasn't quite as often, yeah.
Yeah, he stayed. Yeah.
For quite a while, yeah.
And then here we are, 7-8 years later.
Yep.
You walked on fire a couple times with us.
Twice. That is correct, yes.
How was that in 2018? I remember you in the bathroom throwing the water on the face
Was I?
at Embassy Suites.
Was I doing that?
Yeah.
That sounds about right, though. It doesn't surprise me. I remember being like, how do you walk on fire? Like, how does this work? There's no way. But I also know that hundreds of thousands of people have done it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not a wimp, I don't think. There's got to be a way to do this. So I don't remember that. Also sounds like it likely happened. Seems likely in my mind. So when I saw the hot coals and Dave Albin, who does it, phenomenal guy, by the way, kept in touch with him since. He's been awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we can do this. I did notice, though, the key, you absolutely have to brush your feet off at the end on the grass. Like, that's huge. If you don't do that, you're going to remember it a lot more and a lot more intensely. So that was the big thing. Angie wants to walk on glass, though, the broken glass. My wife. That's the big thing she wants to do.
Now, we haven't done the glass walk out here. We'll be doing that soon.
Have you done it?
Coming time.
You probably
not.
You have
I
not
done it. No, I'm
Okay.
actually going to go out in October with Dave because he's getting to a point. He's got a grandbaby now, and
Mm-hmm.
he's done this for so long. He's actually going to train a lot of the people that have helped him with the events. So I'm going to get trained by him
All right.
to do all of that, so we can continue to do it here.
He's going to pay it forward, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Now, what
Sounds
was going
good.
through your mind? I remember when you lined up
Mm-hmm.
right at the end of that lane to take that walk.
You remember
What-
this better than I do,
I do.
think.
You got a bad memory, huh?
I actually have a really good memory. I remember doing it. I remember there was an MMA fighter there as well. And I remember as soon as he did it, he wanted to do it again. And you could tell Dave didn't really like that idea. And if you think about it, if you do it twice, it diminishes those who did it once. So the MMA fighter did not actually do it again. But as soon as he said, I was like, I want to do it again. And obviously that creates a ripple effect. So, I understand why Dave wasn't crazy about that. I remember doing it. I remember wiping the feet off really well. And then I thought it was pretty cool. In fact, when you had it out here 3 years later,
2020. Yeah, when we opened the building here.
right before I think COVID kind of went wild, or a year before, all of our kids did it. I don't know if Jordan did it, but I believe all of our other kids did it.
So you might have held her as you walked, I think is what it was.
I think we did.
Yeah. So you had the whole family.
Angie held her. Angie held her. That's what it was. I'm pretty sure Angie held her. So
yeah, that was a fun night.
I'm a big guy. I sweat a lot.
Yeah. So I remember the first thing I remember,
Yeah.
because I don't follow professional sports or professional football. So when you walked into
How dare you?
to the gym. I'm sorry, but
You should be.
It's just true. I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know my son Riley, he's into it now.
I'm just kidding.
He
Yeah.
razzes me all the time. He's like, you don't know about this team, that team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you walked in. I didn't know your background with football. So share that story, because that's been a huge part of your life. You were on that team with the red, and they've got quite the
14 different name changes.
Quite that fame. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's a convoluted, long story. My dad actually wouldn't let me play football. I wanted to my whole childhood, and he didn't want me to play football. Ironically, he didn't want me to get hurt. Here I am, 10, 11 surgeries later. So I started in sixth grade. I did cross country because I was bored. I was walking home one day. I'm like, there's a group of people over there. I'll go join them tomorrow. I didn't know what they were. So I walk over the next day, and they're like, we're going to run 2 miles. I was like, sure, why not? It's better than just going home and sitting on the couch doing nothing. So I actually did cross country in 6th grade. 7th and 8th grade were my first 2 years in football. I was actually a quarterback. And then in high school, I actually didn't even play defense because I became the starting quarterback on varsity. He didn't want me to get hurt, the head coach. He actually put me at safety. I don't know if you know positions too in depth. I'm not a safety. Okay. Safeties are the small, fast guys who can run around all over the place. So, but he put me as safety in his words because he didn't want me to get touched, is what he said. Coach Hall, my high school coach. Then my junior, he didn't even let me play defense. He's like, you're going to be the quarterback. And then when it's the defensive priority in practice, you're going to be a scout team quarterback. So going into my senior year, I didn't like quarterback, if I'm being honest. I never wanted to play quarterback. I wanted to be a receiver or a tight end or one of those things. And my dad convinced me because I was a pitcher. I'm tall. I have a really good arm. And he's like, you need to play quarterback. So that was kind of the reason I played quarterback. And so I go to my coach going into my senior year of high school, and I'm getting letters and I'm getting recruited and whatnot. And I'd officially chosen football over baseball. I was actually better at baseball growing up, especially being a pitcher. But I had an elbow injury. Long story short, I ended up choosing football because I didn't have to have surgery on the elbow to play football. So I go to my coach before my senior year, and I'm like, Coach, I don't really like quarterback. Can I play defense? His response to me was, you're too nice to play defense. He wasn't wrong at the time. I had to find what I call the switch. Okay, when you're on the field, you turn it off. When you're off the field, you turn it off, so you don't end up in jail or something like that. But my senior year, I was the only kid on the team that played offense and defense, quarterback, defensive end. Okay, because his other response was, you still have to play quarterback. We need a quarterback. I was like, fine. Like, I was that kid that was pouting about playing quarterback. That's how much I did not like it, did not enjoy it. I just wanted to go hit people. And long story short, Oregon actually pulled their offer from me when I started to prioritize defense. Washington never called. Washington State stayed on board. Oregon State stayed on board. Nebraska looked at me and said, you're not good enough to play here. And so my main options were Washington State, Oregon State, and obviously, like Idaho State, some of the other schools. But in my mind, I wanted to play big-time football, and that was, what I was looking towards. And then my last game, my senior year, and I was so raw as a defensive end because I hadn't played.
And you're getting recruited by these schools from the quarterback position.
Yes.
They're looking at you as a quarterback.
Yes.
You're brand new defense.
Yep.
And just learning that role still last year. Okay.
I was insanely raw. I basically just flew off the line with no technique, tried to overpower and outrun everybody, which I could sometimes do. My last game, my senior year, we played Moses Lake. They were triple option offense. So all they did was run the ball over and over and over. I had a great game. I had 22 tackles. So my dad sent in the film to Nebraska. They called me and they said, hey, we're going to offer you to walk on. I was like, oh, man, because out-of-state tuition's brutal. And my dad had looked at me and he had said at one point, if you want to go to college, you got to get a scholarship or you're going to have to take out a loan and, pay the interest on that for however long that is, which is usually decades. And so my dream school was Nebraska. Born in Hastings. My dad grew up in a small family farm, Giltner, Nebraska. My whole entire dad's side of the family is Nebraska. Like, that was my team growing up. That was my dream growing up, was to play football at the University of Nebraska. And so I said no, because I wasn't going to pay for the rest of my life, basically having to pay out-of-state tuition, things of that nature, to go there when I could go 2 hours away to Pullman or I could go 4 hours away to Corvallis, Washington State or Oregon State. So I said no. Called back the next night, Nebraska did, and they said, we've decided to offer you a scholarship, which you would think would have thrilled me. I was pissed. I was like, you could have offered this to me before. You were trying to take advantage of what you knew was a big-time fan and get me for free. Well, now looking back on it, I understand that reaction. It's also very closed-minded, one-sided, because college football is a business, whether people know it or not. So why would you not try to get a player without having to pay for him? That's scholarship, so to speak.
Yeah.
So anyways, I ended up going to Nebraska, long story short. Had a lot of fun there, made some plays there, got drafted to the Rams, was there for 4 years, signed as a free agent with Redskins, the football team, Commanders, whatever you want to call them. It was so funny because when they were called the football team, people would be like, well, who'd you play for? The football team. Well, yeah, which team? The football team. Well, what's their name? The football. Like, people weren't putting together that was the name. What's that? Who's on first? I always felt like Who's on First, that old skip from back in the day. But so anyways, yeah, played 8 years in the league, retired 7-8 years ago, moved out here. We actually moved out here in 2010, but I was in D.C. for those last 4 or 5 seasons. So we'd only be out here for like January, February, and then 1 month in the summer right before training camp. So like just 3 months a year. We actually just, when we moved here full time, we had pretty much lived out of boxes when the times we were here, because it was hardly worth it to unpack anything and then have to repack it and go back out to Virginia, where we actually lived, Ashburn, Virginia. So yeah, and we've been kind of hanging, chilling in northern Colorado ever since.
Yeah. What brought you out to Loveland? And I know we've talked offline about this, but anywhere in the U.S. that you can live, what brings you to Loveland, Colorado?
So when we went from St. Louis to D.C., it was 2009, I think. And if you remember, the market had kind of tanked. The housing market was awful, real estate market. St. Louis was about as bad as you could get in the country. So we tried to sell our house, got an offer, laughed at it. 3 years later, got an offer for much less, took it and celebrated in the process. And so while we're in Virginia, we just rented. Virginia's awesome. It really is. It was much more beautiful than I had anticipated. I liked it a lot, but we had no family there. We didn't want to stay there long term. And so we just rented, and Ange and I one night were like, where do we want to live full time going forward? Once I'm retired, whenever my career's over. Immediately 2 things came up: beach, mountains. Okay. No family anywhere on the beach, and technically none in the mountains, but Nebraska's, kind of relatively close, where a lot of my family is, where her whole family is. And then my sister lived in Loveland at the time. So we had been to Loveland several times. So we talked about Loveland. And Loveland, as you know, is 2 hours from most ski resorts, and then 3 hours from Angie's side of the family, 5 from mine in Hastings, Grand Island. So that's kind of how we ended up in good old Loveland, Colorado. So we built our house, and then when I did retire, moved in full time.
And then what is life like after football? So you just described that entire experience from high school. I
tried to keep it short.
No, but it's amazing. But I mean, imagine the people watching this, like that's a dream of so many people watching this. They're getting offers and they're going to college and they're playing the pro, and then the season's over. What made you first decide to stop? So at the end of that 8 years, what was hey, this is the last season for me, and take me through that. How was that? Why was that?
That was a torturous process. I don't think most people realize the Ray Lewises, the Peyton Mannings, the guys who decide when they're done, the Tom Bradys, they're probably not even the 1%. They might be 0.01%. Most guys in the NFL, 99.9, you're told when you're done. Either father time or a team or an injury or a doctor or something like that. So I had really bad patella tendonitis and quad tendonitis. So basically above and below both knees, really bad. And it was really painful. Like just standing up, sitting down off the couch was really hard. So I signed the contract with the Redskins. I guess that's what I'm going to call them. The Redskins, the Commanders. And second game, I'd taken on God knows how many double teams in my career. I just came off the ball, hit one guy on a pass rush move, and my knee just gave out. Basically, the quad tendon above my right knee tore is what happened. And I remember the Dr. Annunziata, telling me, this is a fairly simple surgery. You'll be back within 5 months. And my rehab was going great. I remember Larry Hess, the team trainer, looking at me and going, you're ahead of schedule. I was always ahead of schedule. In like my left shoulder was supposed to take 6 to 9. I was cleared in 5. My right shoulder, basically the same injury other side, 6 to 9. I was cleared in 4. My ankle, I had a bone spur removed twice, 4 to 6 weeks. I was cleared both times in 3 to 4 weeks. So I was always ahead of schedule. And then they gave me a CPM machine. Basically, it moves your leg. Because one of the toughest things to get is range of motion, bending your knee back. And I'm at home and I'm doing the protocol they told me to do, and all of a sudden I feel a ton of pain in my knee. And I even called Hess that night, and he's like, well, you must be in a lot of pain if you're calling me at home. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty bad. They did another MRI. Basically, the quad tendon retore in the CPM machine. And now it was no longer, this is fairly basic, you'll be back in 5 months. This is, you've torn it twice within 3 weeks. This is kind of unprecedented. We don't know what to expect. I'll make this story short because of my 10, 11 surgeries I've had, 6 were on the right knee. So 2 quad tendon repairs, and I don't even remember what all of them were for. I got stuck. I couldn't get the range of motion I needed, so they took a bunch of scar tissue out. So that was another one. I couldn't get to 90 degrees. That got me to 90. You want to get to 120 to get cleared, 120 degrees in your knee flexion. And I was stuck at 105 for months, couldn't figure out why. And so they did a CT scan. A freaking bone had grown in my knee out of nowhere. And it wasn't small. So it was a major operation to open me up and take out this big bone. There's another one in there. I honestly can't remember what it is. And whatever number 5 was, and number 6. So I had a great day of rehab. And I remember Dr. Andrews looking at me. He's probably the most well-known orthopedic surgeon in the world. He looks at me and he goes, you're lucky to be able to walk, let alone try to come back and run and play. He goes, it's kind of a miracle that you can walk right. Because I couldn't walk right. I was on crutches for 5 months. For the next 7 months, I couldn't walk right. I'd be walking like in the mall, and my leg would just give out, and I'd be on the floor. So I was constantly walking like, am I going to fall? All the time. And then when I started to just jog, they had an anti-gravity treadmill. So basically, I started out at 25% of my body weight, and my knee would still give out just trying to jog. And then 50%, 75%, gradually we got to the point where I could just jog 75% than my full body weight. And I had a great day of rehab. The first positive day, and I'm condensing 2 years as short as I can. So many days of frustration, so many days of I'm going to lose my ever-loving mind. I had it in my mind, I'm going to do what's never been done. I just had that, and I was going to do it. I even came up with a moniker. I'm like, Ange, I'm going nuts. I'm like a caged tiger at the zoo. And one day that door is going to open, and I'm just going to explode. Mm-hmm. So I would start to tweet about caged tiger. You know, I came up with this whole thing. Finally, Hess. So actually, deceleration is tougher than acceleration when you're rehabbing because you use more muscles to slow down than you do to take off. And so he had me sprinting up the hill, but the tough part was walking back down was the tougher part. And I'd finally got to the point where I could sprint up the hill and I could walk back down without a limp. He's like, this is huge because now that you can do that, we can start COD, change of direction, which is the toughest thing to do. Full speed change of direction in ACL rehab, any sort of knee rehab, any sort of leg rehab. It's the toughest thing to do. It's stopping your full body weight, changing and going the other direction at full speed. Obviously, we weren't going to start at full speed, but he's like, we can start doing this now. Mm-hmm. I went home that night so pumped. I was excited. I'm going to do what's never been done. My knee blew up. Just got huge. I bumped the mic. Just got huge. And it hurt a lot, probably more than the initial injury. So the next day, I limp in, and Hess just stares at me. And he goes, what now? I go, I don't know. You're the trainer. I was pissed. Basically, we don't know how. It got infected. And so they had to, again, it was like a big infection. So, and it was Wimi Dewogi. He was actually the Nationals team doctor that did my last 2 surgeries. I don't want to say I lost faith in the Redskins commander surgeon, but after 4, I'm like, I'm trying someone else. And Wimi was great. He goes, dude, this ended up, he goes, I thought I could drain it. I thought I could get it out with a scope because that's what I thought it was going to be. He goes, I had to cut you open. And anytime you cut it open, any body part open, it goes from a 4 to 6 week recovery to 4 to 6, or depending on how big the scar is, 6 to 9 months. Mine was going to be 4 to 6 instead of months, instead of 4 to 6 weeks. Redskins let me go 2 weeks later. That's actually, I went down to Florida. We went down to the Andrews Institute. We lived there for 4 months. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a blast. We're living on the beach. If you've ever seen or been to Portofino, it's a resort that people travel to have vacations. So my whole family, basically my job was to get up, go rehab, come back, eat lunch, go rehab, and then we'd go on the beach or we'd go to the pool. And every weekend we'd go do some sort of excursion. It was honestly it was a great distraction for the frustration that was going on, but it's one of the funnest times in my life because I would be driving to work and I'd be like, yeah, there's the ocean right there. This is cool. All right, I can do that. I'm driving home for lunch, ocean, pool. It was really cool. We swam with dolphins, like live wild dolphins in the ocean. We did all sorts of stuff that was fun. Got cleared at the end. The Redskins GM at the time had told me, get cleared, we'll give you a look. And it was interesting because Larry Hess happened to be down there right before I got cleared looking at another Redskins player who was at the Andrews Institute. So he watched me. He goes, dude, you look pretty good. He goes, I'll tell Bruce it's time to bring you in. Bruce Allen, the GM, never brought me in. He was full of it. My agent was like, yeah, it's par for the course. He does that a lot. Nobody was interested at that point. And would you be? You're looking at a guy 10 surgeries deep, 6 on the right knee. You got an orthopedic surgeon who's like, it's a miracle you can walk. Yeah, it's great that you can run and do all this stuff now, but every time we turn around, there's something going to potentially happen wrong, Adam. So this was a long 2-year process of, am I really done? Yeah. My agent gave up quickly, if I'm being honest with you. Okay. Trying to get me tryouts and trying to get me looks with the team. So after not even 6 months, but we'll say 6 months, he kind of gave up, disappeared, ghosted out of nowhere. And then it was funny when I fired him, then all of a sudden he called me immediately. I was like, why do you care now? Because I hired a new agent who was re-excited, reinvigorating, going to try to make those calls. After a while, the new agent's like, man, I've done everything I can do. He even texted John Elway. And you go from being a first-round pick to someone texts John Elway, hey, you interested in looking at Adam Carriker? And all he says back is, nah. I was like, dang, all right. John Elway. That's where we're at. I can't blame him. He's got to do his best for the team, not what's best for Adam Carriker. So you go from, being drafted where I was and basically starting for 8 years to I'm not even worth a 45-minute drive, 45-minute workout just to tell me, just to see if there's a possibility. So that was challenging. After about another 6 months, that agent, and he's still my agent to this day. We talk every so often. He's like, Adam, I can't do anymore. It wasn't good enough for me. And it got to a point where it wasn't even about coming back and playing as much as I wanted to. It was about, I have to exhaust. This is everything I've ever worked for, everything I've ever dreamed of. This has been my entire life since I started playing t-ball when I was 7. Sports, competing. And it became about exhausting every single option and knowing that when I looked myself in the mirror for the rest of my life that I had done so. It wasn't even about playing anymore. It was about exhausting the option and have I done everything. I'll be honest, I became OCD about it. I really did. I know which GMs and coaches in the NFL are pretty friendly and which ones aren't because I got all hold of all their numbers and I texted them all. And John Harbaugh, great guy. He would text back every time. And I even told Angie, I don't know why he's texting me back, but this is great. He had set up a workout and their GM at the time, Ozzie Newsome, canceled it. So, and not that Ozzie's a bad guy or anything. Again, got to do his best for the club. I'd be up till 2, 3 in the morning trying to get somebody's info or recording something I did at the gym, trying to send it to somebody. Like I was straight up OCD about it. So this was another year. So by now, it's 2 years. 1 year with my agents two of them trying to do stuff, me trying to do stuff. And my wife, Angie, is as supportive as you'll find. She really is. Like, any husband's going to say that about his wife. Like, she really is. You cannot ask any more of that woman. We have 6 kids between the ages of 6 and 13, and she organizes everything, and she has my back through everything. And I could tell. I knew when I needed to be done. We were on the chairlift at Eldora skiing, and my dad had always told me, if you and your wife are fighting, not a problem. Half the fun of fighting is making up. He said, if she looks at you and she doesn't care, you've got problems. She had grown weary of me being obsessed with this. And I'm not going to say she didn't care, but had I pushed it anymore, when she looked at me on that chairlift, she would not have cared anymore. And it wouldn't have been her fault. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I have to be done.
Did you not like the Adam you had become? Because there's value in that. I'm going to exhaust every option. I'm going to be obsessive about this. Tell me about that. Or did you not like what she was seeing, or her reaction to what this had turned into?
I didn't like what it was doing to her and the kids, which was my fault. Exhausting every option, like you said, there's value in that. At a certain point, there's diminishing returns, and at a certain point, you're affecting people around you negatively, and I had clearly gotten to that point.
So what does that conversation look like? Was the decision right on that ski lift? And then did you tell her on the ski lift to take me through that? Because I'm thinking, I'm sitting here with all of my life's passions, like men, right? We're passionate. Mm-hmm. We find our purpose. We're here to give provision, right? Provides provision for your family. And then that just gets taken away, right? Like chopped at the knees, right? Mm-hmm. Your knee blows up, 6, 7, 10 surgeries. And then, so that's gotta be hard. So, So what does that conversation look like? And then what happens after that?
I forgot one thing. One team did bring me in, the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. And in my training for the Falcons, because I was actually moving really well, there was a day where I was at Loveland Sports Park, and I'm doing a certain type of training because they're going to have me do broad jump. They want to test my 40, my broad jump, all this stuff. If you've got banged up joints and you weigh 300 pounds, doing broad jump is not smart. And I'll never forget, all of a sudden my left knee started killing me. I didn't know what it was about. So anyways, the Falcons bring me in, and I'm just stiff. I'm no longer fluid. I'm explosive, but anytime I have to stop or change direction, I'm stiff. You don't want to be stiff in the NFL. You want to be fluid. And it wasn't my right knee. It was my left knee. Years go by, and I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but years go by, and I just lived with it for a while. I said, Angie, I don't care what's going on because I'm so surgeried out. I'm just going to live with it. Well, I've had a torn meniscus in that year, in that knee, for 9 years. That was 2014 with 2023. I found out about the torn meniscus. I waited about 5 years to finally get it looked at. So I've known about it for 4 years. I'm surgeried out. I finally decided. I went to Steadman Hawkins down in Denver, and they're like, this is as good as it's going to get. So either you can live with it the way it is, or you can try to get surgery to fix it. There's risk in that. There's positives. I've finally decided come November, I'm going to have this surgery, and it's not a gigantically major surgery. I'm tired of doing it. So anyways, I've had a torn meniscus for almost a decade. But that was why I was so stiff. At the Falcons thing. Now, I still actually did pretty good if you looked at how I played and how I battled and doing my responsibility and making plays. I've learned a lot of other things at game. Like I could tell you if it was run past 90% of the time before the snap, and I could tell you if they're going right or left. Offensive linemen are big, fat, lazy. They lean and they look. If that offends an O-lineman, get better and use my words, because I used that, but it wasn't because physically I was moving great. And they told me afterwards, they're like, you did great. Then they never offered me. So that was frustrating. But so back to the chairlift moment. And at this point, I actually didn't know what was wrong with my left knee. I found out 3 or 4 years when I finally got it looked at, 3 or 4 years after this. The chairlift moment, it wasn't a conversation at that point. Angie had looked at me a long time before that and said, do what you got to do. And when I say a long time, I'm talking probably like a year to year and a half before that. Do what you got to do. I'll support you. But I could tell that I had pushed and pushed and pushed, trying to find a way back in, or just trying to get a shot, or just knowing that I had done everything so my mind could be at ease. I could tell that I had pushed just a little bit too far with her. And again, that was not her, that was me. Think about your spouse being on the phone all the time. Think about your spouse being up till 2, 3 in the morning, trying to do this or that or whatever. And so that look she gave me on the chairlift, because I brought up something again. I'm going to contact this guy or whatever it was. I don't even remember. Just the look she gave me. She didn't say anything. I remember thinking, I got to be done. And so I think I just told her a couple days later. I just said, I think I'm going to retire. Like I've exhausted everything. And I just remember her kind of just not saying too much, but you could just see relief on her. I had I told people I was going to retire, made it public or whatever. And then gradually, how do I put this? Because she always cared, but just the look went from you've exhausted me to now we can kind of move on to the next phase of our life together.
Love it. Well, and what I love about you is you've had other opportunities to go do other things, and you say that's going to take me away from the family. Mm-hmm. You're with the family. You have 6 kids. They each play 3 sports, right? Or at least that's what it looks like. But you're driving all around. You're super invested in your family, super invested in your kids and their sports and everything. Mm-hmm. And I love that about you, right? Because you had other opportunities after NFL where that would have taken you away from them. So how was that transition? You decide you're done. It's done. Being that was such a part of your life, did you experience any kind of, they call it like the midlife crisis or the, what do I do now? Like you're not training, you're not in that world. So like, how do you fill your time? What happens after that?
Yeah.
How did you get from where you were to where you are now? And was that a challenge? Was that a struggle? I can only imagine if all of this got ripped away from me and I couldn't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I would do. What did you do?
So it's interesting because one of the offers that I got was actually from WWE. I'm a big pro wrestling fan, as you know, was from WWE. So there was a Redskins fan in DC that I come to find out was one of the producers for WWE. I didn't know it. I'd known this guy for like a year or two. So anyways, he's like, you want to, he goes out of nowhere. He goes, you want to do an interview to be on our Tough Enough show. Tough Enough is a show they do every once in a while. People trying to make it to WWE. They start with like 20 people, narrow it down to 1 or 2, and then you're offered at the end. And I was still, this was the point, I think it was about like 6 weeks before the Falcons brought me in for their mini camp, my tryout, so to speak. And I was like, man, I'm still in the NFL world. Like I haven't given up on this yet. And so I missed the date for the tryout for the Tough Enough show. He calls me, I think, just a couple weeks after I retired. And he goes, they want to interview you on Zoom, Skype, whatever it was. And so there was a big boardroom table, all these guys, and they asked me a bunch of questions. And I said, guys, I don't know how to wrestle. I said, well, that's great. You don't have any bad habits. I don't know if you know this. Pro wrestling is a little different than regular wrestling. You may or may not know that. Don't want to burst anybody's bubble, just like Santa's not real. All right, so they said, that's great. You don't have bad habits. We like teaching people from scratch. They said, can you talk? I said, well, I was once terrified to order pizza as a kid on the phone. Now, I think it's what I'm going to do for a living if this doesn't work out. And so they had me cut some promos. They had me do a few things. And I had been doing shows at that point. If you ever have nothing to do with your life, Google Fourth and Pain. You'll see me and a much smaller guy who lost 250 pounds at one point, which is why he was smaller, sitting there talking pro wrestling and some NFL football. And so at the end of it, they must have liked what I said. Their exact words were, you're as advertised. We'd like to offer you to come to Orlando, work in our development facility, which is known as NXT. And I was like, man, how do I pass this up? Angie flat out told me to go.
She did. What year was this?
Oh, man. So I think I retired like 14, 15, somewhere in there.
That's probably right when you moved to Loveland. And that's, I think, right about when we met.
I think
this is all happening right about this
I think
time.
the kids had just started jujitsu, or maybe they'd been doing it for a while. And I go, you have no idea what you just told me to do. And she doesn't. She does not like pro wrestling. She will not let me watch it with the kids. She lets me watch it, but never with the kids. And it's not even the pro wrestling I grew up with beers and middle fingers and Sable out there with nothing on, but, hands on the. Anyways, this is like actually PG era, and she doesn't even like it because that's what pro wrestling has become. WWE is PG because of the sponsors.
Mm-hmm. I remember back in, 80s, right? Because I was born in 81. I remember the Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and then Attitude Era. Yeah, and that definitely
took
shifted.
a swerve. Yeah.
Sure did take a swerve. Yeah, and I don't know that I'd let my kids watch it as it started swerving, but then it swerved back.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. And so they started getting the potential to get sponsors is much better if you're a PG product. So wrestling fans will even call it the PG era. WWE's in the PG era, and then they became a publicly traded company, and they became $1 billion company and all this stuff. But it kind of came back. She won't even let them watch the current PG product. Side note, so my dad didn't want me to watch it either, even though he's the one who introduced me. But he introduced me when it was say your prayers, take your vitamins, all that good stuff with Hogan. He did not introduce me with beers and middle fingers, Rock and Austin. And so my dad's office was right there when I was in high school. The TV's right here. So I would have the remote right here, especially because it was Monday Night Football. And this was back when WCW was going on. So the NWO, Hulk Hogan.
They had their battle. Yep.
So I had the previous channel button on speed tap. So my dad would walk out, bam, Monday Night Football. He'd go back, bam, because I could see the reflection in our bookcase. Oh, man, I could see it. The reflection. As soon as he got up out of his chair, bam, Monday Night Football. How's the game going? Great, Dad. Doing awesome. He'd be in the chair, bam. And then it's, pro wrestling.
Well, fat.
Yeah. Too sweet. That's right. Yep. So anyways, they offer me. So I've listened to Stone Cold's podcast. I've listened to a lot of them. I've had the chance to meet Hogan and Goldberg and a lot of these guys. Goldberg, it was my favorite wrestler. He actually came on my Fourth and Pain show that I had with Chuck Carroll for 17 straight appearances. The first time he came on was to talk pro wrestling. Quickly found out he's not a big pro wrestling guy. He's a football guy. Yeah. I'm like, hey, man, you want to come on every week to do NFL picks? He's like, yeah. And then he got fired up. We did miss one. It was the one where Trinity was born, my second oldest daughter. We missed that week. Other than that, he came on every week. And so him and I kind of formed a relationship. He actually just came on one of my shows about a month ago. I hadn't had him on in 8-9 years. He's a good dude. But I got to know some of these guys. And so when they offered me to go to Orlando, their training facility, NXT, and Angie says, you got to go. I was like, you have no idea what you just told me to do. They are on the road 300 plus days a year. Austin has openly talked about, he doesn't have the podcast anymore. He's openly talked about he had never seen anything his daughter had done until she was 15, and he's been divorced 3 times.
Yep.
I said, Ange, that is what that life entails. She goes, you should still go. I did not go.
Why do you think that when you laid that out on the table, right? Because you look at how many of them ended life and their careers well with a healthy marriage, healthy body.
It's few and far between,
if that. Mm-hmm. Right. So you lay that out. What do you think was her push? Maybe she just wanted you out of the house.
Dude, that's never occurred to me.
Maybe that.
It wasn't because she supported me. She wanted me out.
You the heck out of there.
Dude, you have burst my wife bubble. You have just blown my mind, dude. Okay, I'm going to go back to
what
I'm going to go back to what I think it is, what I hope it is. That's how supportive she is, which tells you how much I had pushed for her to give me the dead eye look on the chairlift at Eldora. Okay, not to backtrack, but that's how much I had pushed.
But that must have been something. If she's telling you 300 days a year, here's how these guys all end up.
Yes.
You should go do it, honey. You had to be in just Savageville back then when you were OCDing on the football.
So that tells you how out of line I had become. So anyways, that's how supportive she is, because she's like, go do it. I do think when I explained to her what little bit I knew about a pro wrestlers, I have asked Roman Reigns, because he was all ACC defensive tackle at Georgia Tech. You may not know, but he's the longest reigning WWE champion since like Bruno Sammartino, which is 70s and 80s. He just hit 1,000 days last week. Okay. I've asked Goldberg, obviously pro wrestler, and he was with the Falcons for a while, played at the University of Georgia. I've asked him multiple guys, what's tougher, football or pro wrestling? every single one of them without hesitation say pro wrestling, because there's no off season, there's no time off, and you're traveling 300 plus days a year. Whereas football, you get an off season, you travel for away games, and then you're back home within 24 hours of the game, and you're there for like 5-6 days a week. And if you have a home game, you don't travel. If you have an away game, there's probably a 2 or 3 week break in there. And so everyone unequivocally says it's tougher. I could tell when I explained that to her, there was a little more hesitation. So we just had 1 or 2 kids at the time, Jacob Addison, I think. So it wasn't 6. But I couldn't get out of my mind what Austin said on his podcast. I didn't see anything my daughter did until she was 15, and I've had 3 divorces. I couldn't get that out of my mind. One of my big goals as a kid, one of my dreams was to play at Nebraska. One of my other dreams was to be happily married. And I chose not to go, have never regretted it, not once. Do I wonder what it would have been like? Yes. But here's the other thing. My body sucked at that point. Could I even hold up was another thing. So I've wondered, sure. Never second guessed it. Never thought I made the wrong decision. Not for a second.
And we didn't talk, the days on the road and then the physical toll on the body, the injuries that they've got to work through on top of those that you already had.
Yep. That was a factor in my mind too. So through this journey that you've had, who have been some of the top people that you remember the most that have invested in you and poured into you and had contributed to where you are today? Well, growing up, it was unequivocally my mom and dad. My mom is the most inspirational person I've ever met in my life, and she probably really has no idea. She was adopted when she was 2. My biological grandparents, her mom and dad, were alcoholics, drug addicts. They went into town every night, did their thing. And I think my mom, I don't even know. I've never met any of them. She either has 6 or 7 sisters. They all got locked in the attic every night. And they would get left up there actually for days at a time as well. And my mom was a baby. This is between 0 and 2. Hardly ever got fed. Definitely didn't get breast milk or anything like that. And actually, all they were ever fed was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So to this day, she hates peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. She developed rickets. She's been 98, 99% deaf her entire life. In fact, the day my grandma and grandpa Warner brought her home, to adopt her, the doctors actually told them, if you don't take her home today, she might die, and get her medical attention and care for her. So my mom's story, I've watched her. She was a nurse for 44 years. And here's the thing. The nurses actually would make fun of her for being deaf. They didn't know her story. She doesn't publicly talk about it. She doesn't proclaim it. She doesn't hear as well, but she never made a big mistake, like that could lead to a lawsuit or anything. She was actually, by the time she was done, the highest paid nurse there and considered one of the best. But a lot of nurses would make fun of her. The one spot she can hear is right behind her. Well, where do people talk trash about you? Right behind you, where they don't think you can hear. So she would hear at least some of it, but she would never acknowledge it, never say anything. So I watched my mom have to deal with this every day of my life. Obviously, she's been alive a lot longer than me. I watched her just deal with it in every situation. I watched her deal with adversity. Finally, the hospital, they didn't say it, but they pushed her out because of her hearing eventually. She's the most inspirational person in my life. My dad was incredibly hard on me. That's to put it insanely nicely, insanely mildly. He was doing what he thought was best. He didn't have a whole lot of rules growing up. So he did the opposite. And, there wasn't a whole lot of punishments growing up for him. So he did the opposite. But he was doing what he thought was best. Right. But I always knew they loved me. They would do anything for me. And my mom is the biggest inspiration in my life. My dad has had the biggest impact on my life. So my mom and dad, definitely, obviously Angie. I would like to run through a long list of people. There isn't. I could probably, my high school coach, everybody's flawed. Everybody makes mistakes. So I mentioned my senior year playing against Moses Lake, the triple option offense, sent it to Nebraska. Then they go, you've improved a lot, because I had gone to their camp that previous summer, my first experience as a DN. That's when they had told me, you're not good enough to play here. Go through a whole season. I get 22 tackles versus Moses Lake. They see the tape, offer me to walk on, but then they offer me the scholarship. My high school coach had told me numerous times he'd sent that tape in. We'd asked the folks at Nebraska, have you gotten it? No. My dad sends it in. We get the call from them within 48 hours of him sending it in. So we're fairly convinced that my high school coach struck a deal with Oregon State, where we went for a high school football camp every single year, all 4 years of high school, that we're going to try to get Adam to come to you. I don't know. I've never asked him, and I've been around him numerous times since this point. But my dad and I are fairly convinced that something like that happened, because he was constantly pushing me towards Oregon State. Not Washington State, Oregon State. So I don't know. There was other people who helped, but there's always the but. They were there, but there was this but. Nobody's perfect, but if he really did that, that's a big but. But I've never asked him.
But we talked about this, right? Because you and I, when we first met, and we've been getting to know each other, so we met on the jiu-jitsu mats. Mm-hmm. When I looked at you, I said, I wonder if I can take him. And then a few years later, backyard football, Thanksgiving, I squared up against you.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I knew some grappling. And then you lifted me up, threw me across your lawn. Then I think you proceeded to stiff arm a high school student and score a touchdown.
I don't remember. I
remember?
I remember what you're describing with you and me, because you bring it up every once in a while, but I don't remember the high school student.
Throw me, but you get intense at those games, and I remember that. So yeah, you tossed me there, and that was fun.
Not the same as a jiu-jitsu, Matt, though. That's more my world than it is yours, whereas jiu-jitsu is more your world than it is mine, so to be fair.
So then we talked about that as we're getting to know each other. You're pretty quiet, pretty reserved, and then I think one day, because I send videos to people, I sent you a video, and I can't even remember what the video was about, and I'd never received a video back from you. Now we have these videos going back and forth.
We video text,
and we're trying to one up each other on the video.
Well, you tried to take it up technologically, and I'm like, this is not my world. I will speak, and I will try to one up you on the verbiage. I guess, I don't know. It's not a real competition, but you can win that. You can win that part.
The conversation that was coming out of that, though, and I said, hey, is there a couple of Adam Carrikers, and you said, hey, a lot of people want to get to know me. A lot of people want to be my friends, and trust was something that you talked about. So as we're wrapping up, and you shared this amazing story, these people that have invested in you, and you make this decision to be the guy for your family that you're supposed to be, and you just talk about trust being such a big thing. So like wrap that up. How do you filter that? How do you know that? How do you know somebody has your back, and why is that?
Time is the only true test of a person's character. Time. And what I said was something to the effect of, and I've told my kids, I said, don't worry about how many friends you have. Focus on how many people you can trust. People will come and go throughout your life, whether it's you, me, or anybody else listening to this podcast. When crap hits the fan, who's going to have your back? It's going to be an incredibly much smaller number than people you think are your friends. Don't focus on how many friends you have. Pay attention to how many people you can trust. And what I have learned, and I think I said this in one of the video messages, because you asked, is there two Adam Carrikers? Well, I don't do it on purpose. If there is, there may be. There's the Adam Carriker of I don't know you. Okay, we got to get to this get to know you process. And how do you know if somebody has your back? Time. Yeah. Time is the only true test of a person's character. I drove Angie nuts because she's out of nowhere one day when we're dating. She's like, when are you going to propose? I knew it had been on her mind. She wasn't really hiding it. She finally just came out and said it. I said,
so that was kind of her proposal to you, right?
It was her prodding me. Like, what's taking you so long? And I looked at her and she hated my answer. I came up with a rule so one of the reasons one of my main goals was to be happily married, because my family, there's yours, mine, there's ours, there's, divorces, there's all this stuff. I get a call out of nowhere when I'm 12. Hey, I'm your brother. What? Different things like that, And so I said, Ange, I made a rule a long time ago. I will not propose to somebody until I've dated them for at least 2 years. She hated that. She did wait me out, and I did eventually propose, obviously.
You were such a catch. She just knew. She knew right away. Just fell in love right away.
She's incredibly patient is what she is. Incredibly patient. And so I don't know if there's two Adam Carrikers. I think there's the Adam Carriker of we're getting to know each other, you know, and then there's the Adam Carriker of there's a little bit more of a rapport. Plus, I did say if you put a mic in front of my face or this is – so I never did answer your question earlier. I went on a complete sidebar, you know. What was it like, you know, when all that was ripped away from me and then I had to figure out what to do next? I can come back to that. So for me, like I even said recently, there's some people that I had decided in Northern Colorado, like, hey, I think these are going to be some good people that can be a part of my circle. As there was literally 4 families, okay? Literally right after that, one of them showed their true colors down to 3. Cool, no problem.
Yep.
About a year later, another family showed their true colors. And then what happened, I'm like, this is not right, what they're doing. Well, the other 2 families were connected to that third family. The one family blatantly chose them, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, even though what they were doing was, there's no way you can think it was right, but they had justified it. And then there was another family, I was like, all right, I'm just going to wait and see. And they kind of showed their true colors through their indifference. Okay, when crap hit the fan, they got insanely quiet. And so I still chat with 2 of the 4 families. 2 of the 4, I'm like, I can't trust you. You crapped all over me. When crap hit the fan, you not only did not have my back, you went to the other side and were leading the charge. So you can be insanely friendly to me if you want, but I'm not a chameleon and I'm not going to pretend. Yeah. So anyways, I digress. So that's kind of how I operate time, you know, and I understand people make mistakes. I make mistakes, you know, so I'm a forgiving person as long as someone gives, you know, I'm just like anybody else, give us a legit reason to be forgiving and I'll do it in a heartbeat. If you don't, it's not just going to be handed to you. And I'm going to jump all over the place here. So when everything was said and done and everything I'd ever worked for was now over when I retired, I was incredibly shy when I was a kid. Like my dad's had an insanely positive impact on my life. And the older I get, the more I appreciated it. But when he was so hard on me, it would come down hard on me. It made me I'm not going to say it was all his fault, but it partially contributed to me being very reserved, very shy, scared to death to pick up the phone and order a pepperoni pizza. I mean, we're not talking supreme and you got to take off the onions and the olives and add tomatoes. No, just order the pepperoni pizza. Yeah, can't even get that right. And so it was interesting. The Fourth and Pain show, okay? Chuck brought it up to me, my co-host, because he knew I was a pro wrestling fan. He used to be a pro wrestler. He was a referee after his pro wrestling days were done. I told him no like 4 or 5 times. No, dude, I don't want to speak publicly. Long story short, we had a lockout, I don't know, over 10 years ago. The owners locked us out. And so it became a long, boring off season. Out of nowhere, after I told him no, God knows how many times, I texted him, still want to do that show? Yes. All right, let's do it. And that's literally how it started. I still remember our first recording. It was just literally just like a little recorder because it wasn't an actual show. He's like, we just need to practice. So he starts talking, and then all of a sudden he stops. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to talk. Crap. Yeah, you know. As much as I've talked here today, it's probably hard for people to believe that. But anyways, it kind of morphed into the Fourth and Pain show. And then when I was done in DC, I thought I was done with all that. You know, it was a fun experience. I've learned I'm not horrifically horrible at this, and I don't hate it like I once thought I did. And I was fine with that. So you fast forward a couple, 3 years. Again, I'm a Nebraska guy. Bo Pelini's the head coach. He gets fired, a guy who'd won 9 games every single year of his career. Very polarizing decision. I start to see a lot of opinions from former players. Most of them had played for Pelini, and I completely disagreed with them. I love Pelini. I actually played for him for a year. But they were all saying one thing, and I had the opposite opinion. So I just took to Facebook. And my Facebook page had just started. I think it had like 1,000 followers or something. I just ranted. And I didn't use spell check. I didn't reread it. I didn't use paragraphs. I just ranted. And it's funny because we just celebrated 9 years of the Carriker Chronicles, and this is kind of what kicked it off. And Angie actually still had pictures of that original. She showed it to me. It wasn't great grammatically. Didn't make sense now that I reread it as much as I would have liked it to have, but it kind of got traction. And then that's how the Omaha World Herald, who I was with for years, reached out to me. Can we run this? And that kind of morphed into me working with them for years. And so I wrote that Facebook post. It caught traction. Then they hire Mike Riley. I don't think there was a Nebraska fan on God's green earth that was happy, not because he's not a good dude, but he was a 500 coach. We don't want to be a 500 program. He'd coached at Oregon State for years. I'd been to that camp for years. I knew something about this individual that most Nebraska fans had no clue about. So I wrote something about that. And then people were interested. And I was like, man, do I have something here, or did I just hit a hot button topic? So the next season rolls around, and every Sunday night I wrote an article. I didn't have a name for it at first. And it was, when I say article, I mean Facebook post. But it was long, it was lengthy, and I put a lot of time into it. And it really caught traction. And so I get a call after that Mike Riley's first season from a guy named David Max. He runs HuskerMax.com. He goes, have you ever thought about doing a show? I'm like, well, I've actually done a show in the past. He goes, for every $1 you make writing an article, you can make $6 doing a show. I said, that's awesome on two levels. Number one, I'm not making any money right now, so I'd like to make some. And number two, I liked writing the articles, but tone. 3 people can read the same text and hear it 3 different ways in their head. I spent more time on tone in those articles than anything else. Well, you can hear my tone if I'm doing a show. You can see my body language. I don't have to worry about tone. I'd done the show in the past. I'm like, all right, let's make 6 times as much money as 0 right now. That'd be great. And so I was with him for a year. Then eventually the Herald offered me. I was with them. And so that's how I kind of morphed into the show. It was by accident.
You just got fired up, had a rant.
Basically.
Didn't spell check it.
Bad grammar.
Didn't
all
know
that.
how to use Facebook. Just put it out there.
Yeah.
And here we are, 9 years later.
And luckily the owners locked us out. So I decided to start doing Fourth and Painter. I would have never said yes. And I called Chuck about 2 months ago because I'm now on my own and I've started some other endeavors. I've been asked to do a Big Ten show. A radio station hit me up. It's called the Adam Carriker Show. Like, all this is mind blowing to me when you consider how much I hated the media at one point. I've been misquoted, partially quoted, and it was pretty obvious it was all for clickbait. So I hated the media. I hated public speaking. Like,
Couldn't order a pizza.
Couldn't order a pizza. Are you kidding me with this?
Doing this.
I called Chuck and I said, dude, my first radio show at 93.7 The Ticket, you're my first guest. He goes, why? I go, think about it. None of this ever happens if you don't ask me 42,000 times and I turn you down and then you say yes the one time I ask you to do the show. And so he was my first guest.
Yeah.
So anyways, it just kind of happened. And it just so happened that when Pelini got fired, it was about the same time as it was about the same time the Redskins released me. So there was a 2-year buffer period where I was figuring out, can I still do the NFL after 2 years? No. Do I want to do these articles, speaking? And it took about 2 years to figure out that I liked it. And it all just kind of came together at the right time. And it's mind-blowing to me, the timing. It's mind-blowing the way it happened. And I love it now. I love doing the shows and talking football. I don't enjoy selling sponsorships. I'm not going to hide that. I don't enjoy having to look up all the analytics. I just want to talk. But if you're on your own, as you know, you got to do all that stuff. That's part of the business.
Yeah.
So I've learned to get better at it. I've actually turned 3 no's from sponsors into yeses in the past 2 weeks. I'm pretty proud of that.
Your marketing technique, since you hate it so much, is you call the marketing guy to have him market for you.
Oh, man. I am the marketing guy now, though. That's the thing. Anyways, I digress. So it's kind of crazy how it all turned out.
I love that you shared all this. When you came here to the office, to the building, you grabbed a color card off the wall. And one of the fun things that we do to wrap up is somebody watching this, the one sentence phrase that you wrote down here that you want to leave with the world. When you leave the world, what did you put down?
Well, it's 2 sentences. Is that okay? Is that allowed?
It's whatever you can fit on the card.
Okay. I can fit a lot more then. All right. So I read some of the others. I don't know if I took mine too serious, but this is what came to my mind. One, enjoy your life. I think sometimes people legit just forget to stop and smell the roses. They get so busy with, I want more money, I want more cars, I want this. And some people are just trying to get by, which is a whole different situation. At the end of the day, enjoy your life, okay? But number two, it's not all about us, me, ourselves. Make an impact in other people's lives. So to me, those were the two things that came to my mind fairly quickly when you sent me the text earlier this week and you're like, hey, think about it. I was like, 5 minutes later, I had my response. So
love it. That's a wrap. Thank you, sir.
I've hit the mic like 4 times. I'll try to avoid 5.
Are you a business owner or a business leader and you've had some success, but you're just feeling like you're lacking a little bit of significance, or maybe just lost your way and lost direction a little bit? On top of that, would you like to go to Spain with me? Check out what I have going on September 7th through September 15th of this year, 2023. I am taking a small group of male business owners and business leaders over to Northwest Spain on the hike of a lifetime on the Camino de Santiago. I've got a group of guys that have been very successful and they're just a little off track, a little off path, and we are going to hike 72 miles over 6 days. And we're going to be unpacking those things. We're going to unplug and disconnect from the daily busy grind of life and business. We are together going to recenter, revision, and refocus on our purpose and what's important in life, leadership, and business. And we're going to come back from that experience together, recharged and rejuvenated to keep our journey driving forward. I would love it if you would check out mattshoup.com. Click on the Go to Spain with Matt button, and you can learn all about this adventure that we're about to go take.